our talk on Tuesday. I'm here on my front porch on this nice chilly day with my brother Kevin Waters.
Hello.
Hey, Kevin. And so, Kevin, you want to tell us a little bit about what you do for a living, and then I'll talk a little bit about why I asked you to join me, other than just chatting with my brother.
Yeah, sure. So I run a financial planning, wealth management practice, and that can mean a lot of different things. But generally, it's helping people design and build a personalized plan, whether you're a business or an individual or family, to accomplish your specific goals, financial security. But kind of in a nutshell, I would say, we help people optimize their wealth building, minimize their taxes, and generally make smart money decisions along their life.
Cool. Are you happy with what you just said?
I don't know.
It sounds great to me.
Does it?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to invite you to have this talk with me, other than the fact that it's fun to chat with you, it's always fun to chat with you, is that you have a unique position with your financial background, and I don't know if you want to talk about this,
Sure.
your background in politics.
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting, I feel like you do a lot of consultation with us, and you have a lot of interesting perspectives on kind of our work as a nonprofit. And I also really appreciate how you've been very encouraging of us, and you've been really generous with your time and just giving us feedback. And I just think your perspective is interesting, having those two kind of backgrounds. You've had this fundraising, you've had to engage volunteers, you've had to do all that, and you're working as a financial planner, working with people individually, so anyway, so I think that's just a really interesting set of experiences you had for someone your age, because you are a lot younger than me.
A couple years.
Just a couple years. I still, do you remember on your college visit when I went with you to Ohio State, and the lady there thought I was your girlfriend, and I was like, yes.
I remember that. Yeah, I did not have the same reaction.
You did not have the same reaction. Yeah, so I mean, one thing I really wanted to just hear your perspective on was we've talked a lot about what happened in March with our organization, and I came home.
When you say what happened in March, I mean you mean the pandemic and specifically how that affected the people you've been working with, right?
Good job. Thank you for filling.
Okay. A lot of things happened this year.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Well, specifically, yes. In March, when I came home from Kenya, and right away there was a crisis here, of toilet paper disappearing from shelves, and people just really panicking, and a lot of fear. And then right away in Kenya and a lot of Africa, there was a crisis of food. So a lot of people were going to starve pretty quickly, and so that put us in a position in our organization we hadn't been in before, to do immediate relief work.
Yeah.
And so you made yourself available, and I just wondered, it helped us process some of the things through that. And I just wonder, how did you feel? What were your thoughts just kind of being with us and all those long conversations we had on the phone? And
yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just that we were all trying to figure out what we were actually going through at that moment. And I don't think any of us really knew what it was going to be. And everyone was kind of hunkering down and just kind of figuring out how to get by today, tomorrow, next, the end of the week. But I think we were still confident that it was going to be okay. Maybe overconfident. I don't think anyone realized that, we'd be sitting here and ending the year and potentially having things get worse. But that said, I don't think, the interesting thing about where you were you just got back from Kenya at that moment. So to hear the difference in the situation there was a canyon apart. The idea of us struggling to figure out where we're going to get toilet paper, and how long the market recovery was going to be, and what shape that was going to be, was where my head was at all day. With clients and helping be that calming voice of market downfall happens. we've gone through similar things in the past. There's a way out.
So you really sound like you really felt like a sense of calm here, of like, this is going to be okay. You know, you were kind of reassuring other people. You kind of had this long view at that time.
Yeah.
You say.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and that's generally what we do with clients, right? We're thinking long term. We're helping them see around corners. We're helping them, you know, arrive well positioned at that future date. And I think it's such a stark difference of what people in the communities that you were working in were feeling, where there wasn't the ability to think long term. There wasn't the ability to think, oh shucks, this is going to be a change in lifestyle for a while.
Yeah.
I might have to cut back places, or might lose my job. You know, those sort of things that are by no means insignificant here. Kind of don't hold a candle to some of the things you were talking about and experiencing there, where people were, you know, the shipping routes, the logistics that was going to allow them to eat and allow them to feed their families not being there. I mean, that was, you know, so I think that whenever we started talking, the biggest thing that that comes to mind as you ask that question is just the biggest difference of the conversations I was having every day with people that were worried, and rightfully so, and like everyone was, and still is. But I think, you know, there were people in Kenya that were going to starve.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what I think is unique about what you and Brad do and what Foothold does is that, you know, it was drastically different. That moment was drastically different than the typical day-to-day of the Foothold operations, but it wasn't drastically different to the mission, and the focus and the way you guys run the organization. And that's to provide very custom, specific assistance, specific resources to make the greatest impact with the smallest amount of footprint, right? And I think at that moment, you know, you rose to the occasion. So you know, it wasn't a drift. It wasn't a difference. It wasn't different in my mind. It was the need changed.
How did it feel for you to be a part of that? Like, to really be a part of our discussions about that? Like, sounds like it was, it was kind of, was it refreshing in a way to like be, or was it like I don't know how, that's not the right word, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might give me too much credit, but I, you know, there was a couple late night phone calls. It put me at, and I don't know how I'm going to say this.
Was it kind of grounding? Like, was it definitely kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think humbling, grounding to know that at the end of the day, we're going to be okay. But, you know, what Cherie and Brad are dealing with is life and death.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I appreciate that you think I made a positive impact. I love being a part of it, but I don't know. I guess it was humbling to know that, like, that we're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And the sacrifices that you and Brad made in those moments, and the changes you made, and the work you put in, we're gonna change the future of a community. We're gonna, you know, save people's lives. I mean, that is not something you get to do on a regular basis, so dramatically, so quickly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was definitely a humbling experience, but I guess I hadn't thought about how, like, you know, my role in the whole thing.
Well, you know, I mean, for me, I was coming back from this trip. And when I came back, it was like I had a list of things. I had a ton of things I wanted to fundraise for, that I'm like, there were kids who I met who were in food scarcity, and the thought of them, like how desperate situation they were in, you know, I just got off the plane, and the travel ban was this, I mean, I sort of was in this shock.
Yeah.
And we had to make some decisions, and I felt like I was sort of, I was definitely very emotionally raw, but I was a little bit like, I couldn't put one foot in front of the other, you know, like I was struggling. And I know that, you know, I just felt like there was that moment where you said to me, it was like, snap out of it, Cherie. You know, everybody kind of needs that moment, needs someone to say, why are you're like, why are you even worried about moving forward with this? You know, people are going to die if you don't do something. And so I think I was just mentally kind of stuck for a moment because it was all happening so fast. And so I think I think it's just the important role we all play in the big picture is that, you know, we all have things to contribute, whether it's financial or, you know, emotionally supportive. And then just processing. I think just processing. And how do we present this to people who are freaking out about toilet paper? How do we? One thing Mom said was that she felt like, as a social worker, you know, our country was in like a trauma state, and this crisis in Kenya kind of, for some people, gave them like an outlet to focus on instead of focusing on themselves. And I thought that was kind of, because to me it seemed like this impossible thing. You know, how do we get people to care about this when they're, but it was almost that was the message that resonated with people. It was like they felt kind of guilty for freaking out about toilet paper, and so it worked.
You know, people are, you know, and the other thing that was interesting is that this pandemic affects people differently. This is a very targeted event where, you know, the one person is furloughed. You know, one family has both income earners furloughed, or another family has a family member that's, you know, fear for their health, right? And, you know, you have business owners that are failing and going out of business. But this is still the United States, and people get taken care of, and people figure things out, and people triumph. And these moments also create opportunity and fresh beginnings. And so, like, even the most bleak seems hopeful in comparison to what these people are going through in Kenya. But I think the other thing is that that's not the case for a lot of people. A lot of people felt comfortable about their health. They got to work from home comfortably in their pajamas. We all got checks from the government. Some of us didn't need them. You know, some of us made more money on unemployment than we made working, right? So it didn't affect everyone the same way. I have, you know, clients as business owners, and that their business thrived as a part of, because of because they were able to step up and meet an opportunity. And and so for a lot of people, they felt guilty, right? They were sitting around thinking I didn't need that stimulus check. My neighbor's unemployed. My you know, my other friend is in the hospital, but I'm doing great. And I think that was, for a lot of people, hard to deal with as well. Not that you'd rather be on that side of the fence, but I think, you know, here was a really obvious way to make an amazing impact on a group of people that were all going through the same thing. Everyone in that community in Kenya was struggling with access to food. Like, everyone that went to the market that, you know, those days were, you know, well, you could probably explain the situation better than me, but as I understand it, you know, shortages of food, astronomical cost to put enough food on the table,
while people have lost their jobs, you know, like they're
and not knowing whether there's going to be another shipment, like not knowing whether there's going to be more, and so buying food at a high rate of a very high expense, knowing that it might go bad, and then not knowing that there's going to be more. Those sort of decisions aren't being made here. So I mean, it was just such a stark difference, and so I think because of that, it almost became, you know, I guess I would say it was so obvious to me when we started talking that, you know, we have to act quickly. You have to be loud. You have to be bold. There are lives that on the line, and you have this unique ability to make a difference. And that's, so I think in a lot of ways it was, you know, you were put in a unique position that no one else really had the infrastructure, the knowledge, the experience, and the network to be able to make a quick and decisive action. And that was amazing.
You know, it's interesting to hear your perspective on it, because for me, I felt like we were doing something new, because even though we had the knowledge and we had the infrastructure, the work we were doing was in a different, like we pivoted, which a lot of companies did, a lot of organizations pivoted and found opportunities, or were lucky enough to have opportunities. But, we had done this rehabilitation work where we're teaching people or giving them the tools to fish for themselves kind of thing, instead of giving them a fish every day. And here we were, literally giving people, food. And so our first fear was, of course, what we've seen happen in Ethiopia and other countries, where you go in and you throw a bunch of aid and then you destroy the economy.
Yep.
The farmers go out of work, and then you have a worse famine afterwards. And so I'd seen that throughout, and so it was that kind of moment where we wanted to make sure what we did was careful. And so that was kind of my process too. But it ended up, because we had the relationships we had, and like you said, the infrastructure in place, it was really easy to have those conversations and to just, we had the tools there to pivot.
Yeah.
And so, we're definitely, one thing you brought up too was the fact that, like food here, people go to the grocery store once a week, and they suddenly had to go to the grocery store once every other week or whatever.
Yeah.
They go to the grocery store every day. They buy food every day. So their food doesn't last. They don't have preservatives in it. So when the market shut down, when the shop shut down, I'm not going to eat tomorrow. Like there's no storage of food unless people had cattle. And so, yeah, it was definitely a different intensity for, that they were experiencing there. And I knew it. I knew how quickly it was all going to play out. Yeah. And so we're just so grateful.
And I think back to the shift, the change, the evolving, or the stepping up to the occasion. I think one of the things that I've always appreciated most about Foothold is this efficiency, this return on investment, this the focus on how you execute what you're trying to execute, and it's highly targeted impact that has a kind of a ripple effect, right? So find the few people in the community to not give things away to, but find the specific right person, the right organization, the right community to empower, to train, to add value to, and see them be able to develop a community around them. And so, when I think about what Foothold is, it's like you said, it's not giving away a fish, but teaching a man how to fish kind of mindset, but extremely low operating expense.
Yeah.
So low expenses, and then consistently delivering the exact need the community needs in a creative way to empower them to continue to make those changes and continue to support themselves. And I just think that's, when you think about what you want out of a charity, what you want out of an organization, a nonprofit organization, or what you want out of anything, a church, a business, an investment, you want that. And at that moment, it was an emergency.
Right.
So it required a different need, and you guys were able to shift, and luckily, everyone that gave and everyone that heard the message realized that, and I think that's just that focus on how can we do the most by doing the least has always been been so interesting. And even in this moment where the obvious need was to give away food to people who were, so they don't starve, you guys didn't just do that. And I mean, it's easy to see the reward of, it's easy to look back at that moment and say, look at all the food we delivered, look at all the people who didn't starve because of us. But because you are Foothold, I mean, it wasn't just that. It was, how can we create an ongoing organization? How can we create a moment? How can we take this investment, this this influx of cash, and create something that has a long-standing effect in the community?
Yeah.
And so through the emergency, you were still to your core what Foothold is. And I thought that was, I mean, not how my brain would have worked. My brain would have said, no, let's just get more food out. But you guys are so dedicated to the community, and what makes sense for them, not just in a moment, but long term. And so I think that's just so unique.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was awesome. Well, you like gave a great commercial for us.
I guess. Yeah.
Well, one of the things too is that we kind of assessed what was available, and we realized that, well, the injection of cash was such an interesting thing, because I made an appeal right away, and people gave a couple $1,000s, and we were able to like give people enough food for a couple weeks. And we realized right away that like just giving away food was not going to work, because the food prices were skyrocketing. And so, $3,000 one day was going to be $6,000 the next. And so we had to find a different way to approach it. And I remember Brad saying, if the food prices are increasing, so if we can inject enough bulk food, then these prices, when they come down, we're going to have a surplus. And so that kind of got the conversation going.
How long was that? Like the moment you realized that, because it sounds like the timeline here is interesting. If like you're back from Kenya by this time, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's all happened right. I was back for 4 days when the border shut down.
So the border shut down. As soon as you knew the border shut down, was that was like the height of the very peak of the beginning of the pandemic? Did you know as soon as you heard the borders getting shut down, could you already kind of envision the things that were going to come from that? Or was it like, did it take some time of like, what's the feedback loop?
Well, and that's the one thing we have to, a lot of times they don't tell us things unless we ask. And so there was probably a little delay, because they weren't telling us. They were just in crisis and not imagining that we could help even, And so I just touching base, things were starting to get closed down here, like right after I came home. And I remember being in my office, and there was no one in the office, right? Like, and so I just sent a message to check in, and they were like, it's not good here. And it just from there just unraveled, like, and I could just see it, right? Like the market shut down, the shops are all closed up, the shop owners are hoarding the food for themselves, because they don't know when any more food's coming. And so right then I knew from day to day, you have to go to the market every day for your food. And if those closed down, there was nothing.
Well, I think that goes to show just how important those relationships are on the ground. It's not it's not just what you and Brad and the rest of the team do while you're there.
Yeah.
It's the people that you've built up in the communities, and the lines of communication and the infrastructure and the organization that you built to allow that. Because those are moments that we weren't talking about weeks to put together an action plan, and it was you have to move and to even know that you had to.
Well, and it was crazy. I was talking with you. We were shut down. There weren't a lot of people to talk to. And so I did an emotional plea. I was mad. I saw these pictures on Facebook of like toilet paper being gone from shelves. Yeah. And I just kind of got angry, and I just typed a rant. And that's when the $3,000 came in.
Yeah.
Like immediately. And people started contacting me saying, what can I do? What can I do? And then it was, I had a seminar to run one morning, and I had like 10 minutes. And I sent Rob DeFino a message and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. Can you create create something for me, a graphic? And he was like, I think I know exactly what you want. And his wife was home, so she helped him write it. And like 10 minutes later, he sends me this graphic that was perfect. I get on my break, and I just put another plea out, and it was like I flashed that up, and then the funds just start coming in. Yeah. And we did the $10,000 goal for 10 days, and then we raised $25,000 instead.
Yeah. And what a crazy! I mean, just normally, you do a lot of prep, you fundraise the whole year, you plan out the next year. You've got to do so much to make this work.
Yeah.
You usually get back from these trips, and you get to do a little bit of a victory lap. Like, we just got back. Here are all the pictures and the videos and all the awesome things we accomplished while we were there. Here's the new needs. Here's the next year. And all of that was kind of, you didn't really get to do that.
No.
Right? It was, you got back, Thankfully, you almost didn't. You almost got stuck in Paris. So,
oh, that would have been awful to be stuck in Paris for months on end.
I think you're being sarcastic.
No, I'm not, because I would have gone broke.
Well, you also wouldn't have had anything to do.
I would have had to sleep in the airport to survive, because the hotels would be astronomical.
So yeah, you got back and you immediately had to start fundraising and putting together logistics and coordinating with community leaders on the ground and infrastructure, and I'm assuming vendors and who you're buying things from. And and you didn't really get a break.
No, and it was kind of like, we were thinking, like, our time in the spring to the fall is our time to plan for our annual fundraiser, for our ongoing operating expenses. And so that was a concern, like, how are we gonna, and so we had to just think we have to deal with what's happening right now and worry about that later.
Yeah.
And so, but once again, Brad asked me when I was, right before I left, he was like, what's the one thing you most want to do when you come home? And I was like, I just want to see my family and friends, and I just want to talk. I want to speak in English and and know what's going on. And I couldn't wait to see everyone. And it was
that was a trip where you did not go with Brad.
We were there part of the time together. So I'd been without him for about 4 weeks. And
I just attest to that, like, just have gone on a trip before. There's a sense of loneliness that I've never experienced from being in a strange place, people that don't communicate your language and don't understand.
You don't know what's going on a lot of times.
And you can't really leave or do anything. And
you have to have a chaperone everywhere you go.
So you're getting back and you're like, I want to tell everyone all these things, and then here we are. Not only did you jump back in, you can't see your family. We can't hang out. We can't talk about these, share these things, and then on top of that, you got to get right to work, and talk to your supporters about why you need help. You need them to step up again. I just remember those moments we were talking about those and trying to be thoughtful. How do we ask people to give while they're unsure of their next step and what their family is going to go through, and I think
we are outside on the porch. So. Okay, all right.
And I think not all that different than when I think about what I do and I sit down with someone and I lay out the options, I lay out what's possible and what it's going to take to hit goals, and then I have to challenge them and hold them accountable to that. And you had to do that in a way that no one owed you anything. It wasn't anything like that, but dang, people were going to be suffering without your injection. And I think people responded that quickly once they understood, hey, this is happening, what it looks like, what we're able to do about it. And I think that's always the challenge with Foothold is how do we get people's attention? How do we get people to realize what the opportunity is to help, and how big of an impact a little bit of contribution or a little bit of assistance can go. And obviously in this case, there's a lot of assistance in a very short amount of time, because people rapidly understood the need because they were experiencing it here. And they could relate it. Oh, wow. If we're experiencing this.
Right. That was the message. And it's so funny because you can so easily in the transition, the culture shock of coming home can be really negative. And the fact that you're living off the land, you're living day by day, and then you come home to an environment where there's all these paved roads and everyone could just go, everything's convenient. And so it was hard for me to come back. It's always a tough transition, but on top of it, with everyone freaking out about things that were, everyone was not in their best place, right? And so I came home and I was instantly angry. And that's not a good position to be in to fundraise. And so I really thought, I was assuming people wouldn't give. I was assuming right away, this is hopeless. That was my initial assumption. And it was such a beautiful experience for, people here to just like restore my, my belief in humanity. Like that's really what it was, that Americans were not always self-centered and, and greedy. Like we can be generous, and we sometimes need someone to unify us around a cause. Because I think a lot of people had that guilt, like you were talking about, like, but also people just had nervous energy too. Like, I want to do, so many people wanted to volunteer. Like, what could they do?
Yeah.
And so this was something to channel that. And so it was just so beautiful to see, like, just so many people from so many different backgrounds, people who've never given before, even a lot of young people who gave generously. And
I think, we've had a lot of things. This pandemic was, in a way, it was unifying.
yeah.
Right. I mean, not everyone was going through it the same way. Not everyone was experiencing the same way. And like, again, it was very targeted and who was dramatically affected by it. But we all were affected by it. Right. And it wasn't a, think about the other big events that are seen as, changing of history or that everyone pays attention to. They're not usually global events.
True.
And this was a very global event.
Yep.
Like we kind of watched it on the news arrive here.
True.
Right. We watched it on the news spread
through Europe, and
and then we started to, oh yeah, my colleague got it. Oh, my uncle got it. And so very quickly, I think people became connected with the rest of the world. You know? And we started thinking globally about the solution to this crisis, and economically there. So I think, that's, in a lot of ways, there's so much going on in our daily lives. And there's plenty of reasons to be upset and to think about, we need to make change. And so it can seem a little endless, but I think, for a moment here recently, we've had to think globally, and it's, I think that's hard for a lot of people too. Like, I got problems. I got stuff going on. There's things to give to.
Right.
Why do I care about this community in Kenya? And obviously, there's moments like this that help remind us that we're all, on this kind of rock circling through space, and and it's all connected. So I think that was another thing that was interesting too, is just how we've thought more globally lately. And
people are in general just really more interested in what we do. People would normally ask me, or they will say, how are things going in Kenya? I think there is this sense of, I would say, gratitude that I think a lot of people I know didn't have before. Like, they recognize I still have a safety net in a way, even though everything it's almost like shaking of the foundation and the facade of security has helped us be more aware of all the people around us who may be struggling. And so that's been exciting. There's many people who will stop me and say, what's going on in Kenya? And I don't normally have people that interested, especially in this small town, right? Like, so that's been nice. The few interactions I have with people, it's been nice that people will engage with that. So a question I want to ask you too, as a financial planner, this year there's some changes in tax rules about charitable giving. So things, especially this time of year before 2020 is over, there's some things people might want to know that may, when they're doing their charitable giving this year.
Yeah. So two big things that changed due to the CARES Act, which was which included part of the stimulus dollars and all the changes they made with small business loans and all that, was changing some of the tax rules around charitable donations. And so now there's a universal $300 contribution that everyone can deduct. And that $300 doesn't sound like a lot, but what's unique about that is that it's someone who's normally not giving, someone who maybe doesn't feel like they're able to give a lot.
Okay.
If you don't run a small business, if you don't have a complicated tax situation, you probably take with the standard deduction on your taxes. And because of that standard deduction, you don't get to itemize all those things. So that $300 universal deduction means that you can make a $300 contribution to an organization and still be able to deduct that even while taking the standard deduction. So that's a nice little bonus for folks that want to save some taxes and do some good on at the same time.
So someone maybe who is like right out of college, who's a young professional, who maybe has never like really pursued giving.
I would say pretty much
anyone.
I mean, if you're not itemizing your taxes, which includes a lot of folks. I mean, a lot of people who make good money, established people, still take the standard deduction.
Okay.
And so, if you haven't maxed that $300 contribution this year, be a good time to do it. That's probably not going to be final.
Right. So if you haven't given at least $300 to a charitable, given a charitable donation, do that before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's one set of changes.
And then the other thing would be that they adjusted the percentage of income that you can contribute. So for those people who are giving in a big way, and itemize their taxes and have a lot of different things, it used to be that you could only do a portion of your income that you can contribute as a deductible charitable donation, but now you can go up to 100% of your income.
Wow.
Or AGI, so adjusted gross income. So, for someone who maybe has other revenues of income, who doesn't rely on a source of income, and you could really drive up that contribution and therefore drive down your taxable income in a big way this year. So if someone who obviously you want to consult your tax specialist, your accountant, CPA, but yeah, I mean this is a very unique year to give in a big way, and to be a little bit selfish about it as well, to really benefit your tax exposure this year.
Oh, yeah. It's a good time to put that out there for people before the year ends, right? Yeah. Because it has to be done within 2020 for it to benefit them, right? So, all right, well, cool. Thank you, Kevin, for you sent that information to me. I wanted to get that out there to people, whoever you give to, right? Like, it doesn't have to be Foothold, but we certainly would appreciate that.
It needs to be a qualifying organization.
Right, it has to be one that's qualified as a nonprofit.
Correct.
Right. Good point. So is there anything else, Kevin, that I didn't ask you about that you feel like you want to share or say that we didn't cover?
No, I just think there's as we're wrapping up the year, kind of thinking about all the things that happened this year. It's been a crazy year for most people. It's been volatile. People have been stressed. We've had elections. We're kind of looking to 2021 as a new beginning for a lot of things. Hopefully we're getting back to normal-ish for being to see people, and we're having a new set of leaders in this country. There's a lot of things that are changing, and it's going to be easy to get kind of distracted. But I think about even this organization's gone through a lot, and it wasn't that long ago that that you were working full time elsewhere, and so just the change that the organization's gone through. Just the change the organization's gone through to focus on growth. Bringing you leaving your job to focus full time on this. And then just so dramatically changing the future of the organization, the impact it has. So it's kind of, just to recap 2020. I mean, this has been a huge year of growth for Foothold. You've been tested and tried, and you've stepped up in a huge way, made an amazing impact in the communities you serve, and brought new people into the organization that hadn't been involved as much, and it's been exciting for me to be more involved as well. I think 2 years ago, a year ago, I wasn't nearly as involved, and it's been really rewarding to give back and to be a part of the growth and kind of look into 2021. I mean, hopefully there's less turmoil and chaos, but there's a lot of work to do now that the community's getting revived, and there's going to be some scar tissue that needs to be healed, and so we got to stay diligent. And I think I'm just really excited for what the future of Foothold looks like, and how it continues to grow by not growing, by making a bigger impact, by making such a small impact. And I think that's just kind of unique to where you guys are and how you think about your future and how you want to grow. So I don't know, maybe speak to that a little bit about like
it's
future.
Interesting. What you pointed out was I've been doing a lot of studying about an organization like ours, being at this point of pivoting and growth, and how to scale what we do so that it is ready for growth. And I've been looking at like big nonprofits, and one of them I was looking at, a big nonprofit a lot of people are aware of, is like Charity Water. And as I looked at their model, I'm like blown away by like celebrities and all that support them. Like, how in the world could we ever grow to that place? And then if you really start digging deeper into like Charity Water and other big organizations who have a lot of celebrity, presence, they depend on organizations like ours. Like Charity Water raises a ton of money through their ability to leverage, but they work through, which is great model. I think it's beautiful. But like, the fact that we exist and that, what we're doing is holistic and integrated. We don't just do water, right? We do these other things because we're looking at the whole community. We give people clean water, but then they don't have soap. The girls aren't going to school because they don't have pads. Like, they're going to starve. They might have clean water, but they're going to starve if, we have to keep like looking holistically. And so I think that is, I don't know, to me, that's what sets us apart, because there's not a lot of organizations. I think there's a lot of us actually that are out there, but it's hard. I think we're so much on the ground that it's hard for us to get the attention, the recognition. And so, I think we're not the only ones doing it. The world needs a lot of organizations like ours. And so, but at the same time, it's really exciting to be able to give people a hands-on, like your interaction with us. And you've been to Kenya, like people get a chance to actually go and see and know the names of people that we're working with. And I think that's something that these large, big celebrity organizations don't have, but I'm grateful for what they do because we can be, recipients of that.
I think that's awesome. And you could almost, think about scale and what does that look like? I mean, one thing that jumps in my head is like you guys could write the book on what it takes to run a very grassroots, local, community focused, other focused, I guess highly targeted, really well. I'm trying to think of the words here, but like you guys could write the book on
kind of like best practices. That's kind of what I thought about, like through this process, documenting what we've done as kind of best practice in the midst of a crisis where you have to pivot from and do relief work. How can you do this in a way that's thoughtful? And I think there's not a cookie. I think the answer is not a cookie cutter. It's knowing the community. It's having, if this was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to pivot. It would have just been 10 years ago, it would have probably been the end of our organization because we were just building relationships at that time. It was really the strength of those relationships and having people we could really trust on the ground. And they had skills and resources and network to work within. And so we were really fortunate for that's happened, but it's taken time. Like it was a slow process to get to this point, but it was all felt like it was for, it all came together in this moment. And it, like you said, it's like, it was like the test is for a lot of organizations aren't going to survive this. There's a lot of organizations that are canceling their fundraisers, who are like, paring down. And, we're grateful that, we didn't just survive it, but we feel like we're thriving through it. And we have more work to do and there's more needs. And so, so that's been, just thinking 10 years ago, someone said to us, when Foothold leaves Kenya, when you guys leave, Foothold leaves. There's nothing here going on. Like they only know you when you're here. And to go 10 years, 10 years around the full circle, this happened with me here. Like Brad and I were here in the US. This is how great our partners are on the ground. This is how great our employees are on the ground, that they, and the community recognizes they did it. which is even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not saying.
I mean, that's the ideal, right? I mean, the idea is that there weren't Americans on the ground making things happen. They did it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And if I had, and I, you know, for my initial thought was, you know, I had a lot of guilt of being here, you know,
right.
Eating too much food, you know, putting on all this weight, you know, being in, you know, COVID lockdown. And then that part hit me that I wasn't there. But I would have been such a distraction if I'd been there. They would have been worrying so much about my health and safety that it would have just been, I wanted to be there to be a part of it, but that was almost selfish in a way because.
But I think like a lot of companies and families and individuals and whatever, we got put through a ringer, we rose to the occasion, and we learned we were able to do more than we thought we could.
Yeah.
You know, we were able to manage through something that we didn't have a playbook for. And I just think about recently as I've started to do some leadership development stuff through work and started to talk to different people in the office and start to put these different meetings on the calendar. And we realize we're having more meaningful conversations than we ever had before. Right? Like some of this, I think sometimes like through these steps and through these progress, through these hardships, we grow so much more and understand.
It's like we're leaning in. I feel like we're leaning into these conversations. Yeah. We're lingering, right? People are, you know, I've had so many porch conversations that we sat here longer than we would have. Yeah. You know, we dug into things that we wouldn't have. That's a really good point. And
we're almost closer because we're actively thinking about the people and the relationships we need to have invested in, right? Yeah. Because I know that me and my managing partner, or me and my mentor, or me and the diversity leaders in the office, like we have to talk on a routine basis in order to grow. Because of that, we're putting it on the calendar. We're scheduling it. We're setting time aside.
Right.
This half an hour is for me and that person to have a conversation that's meaningful. There's no more touching base on the walk back to your office from the conference room. There's no more. And so I think that focus has been on where's my time spent, who is it with, and why, and it's kind of shined light on some things we've taken for granted and not invested in. And so I think that's, you know, same thing here is that you've realized a new thing. I can operate from here at the worst case scenario, like the most they need me, we can do it. It can be done. I don't have to get on a plane and fly across the world to make that impact. You know, and that's only through what you've done, like what you've built. And so that's kind of empowering too, as like as an individual, as a donor, as a contributor of any sort. Like I know that I can make a meaningful impact in a needed way across the world very easily because of you and Brad and the organization you've built.
And I feel like that's what we have to offer people. You know, we don't have the budget to have a big flashy ad campaign with, you know, Matt Damon and, you know.
Feel free to jump in and offer your services.
Yeah, you can sit on my porch, Matt. But you know, at the same time, what we're able to give that very direct connection. You know, a friend of mine bought a goat and she named it after her daughter, and like her daughter is, you know, a young adult who's just thrilled by that. And it's like, I'm not going to name the organizations, but there's organizations that do similar things, but they don't have that. And because we're small, that's the advantage we have. And so as we grow, that's something I always want to be mindful of. How do we maintain these meaningful connections? I don't want to sacrifice that. And I believe with the model, the way we're doing things is that's the way we're going to grow. Yeah. Small. We're going to grow small. Right? Yeah. We grow and we delegate. Right, we don't have to be everywhere all the time, and that's what this crisis has shown.
It's not a top down.
Yes,
And so I could easily see, you know, the pouring of support that you have, and the focus and the methodology that you follow. That's repeatable. That can scale. The methodology, the focus, and the progress, and the organizational steps you've taken. I mean, so I could see all these communities, all these organizations kind of following the Foothold model of how to do what they intend to do, how to positively impact a community. And it doesn't mean this huge infrastructure. It means a lot of small infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's
and looking
exactly
for ways to things to support themselves. So like when we built the shop, the proceeds support those employees. Like, so Foothold isn't pouring money into that shop we don't get a bill how much food they eat and what the employees get paid. There's that right away is supporting itself. So we're always looking for ways that can be sustainable, of course. So one other thing that kind of happened through COVID for us, me being home, not being able to like do what I intended, one of the ways we've taken time is to really start using our strategic plan to like track the data of what's our impact. And the coolest thing that's come from that is that we have exceeded, first of all, we exceeded everything we thought we were doing.
Yeah.
But the second part was that it's really helped me be able to communicate with the people on the ground. Like they would tell us things, right? They would say like, oh, this is a great need. But I didn't know how to quantify that. But now when we're looking at the numbers of young women who are coming and asking for pads, I can see that. And I can say, Charity kept telling me that their community set was doing better, but I was looking at the number of bars and I was like, you're not selling that many. Well, come to find out they were selling bars that were 10 times the size. So just, so I had this weird idea that they weren't selling very much and then it wasn't a very sustainable business. And then come to find out I was adding things wrong, right? So like just the data helped me see, they're selling a bar. They're selling like 10 bars in one. Oh my gosh, they're doing much better than I thought. And so the data has helped me ask questions and really help bridge even the cultural barrier of understanding what's happening. And it's helped us clear up. I just feel like it's like I'm there because I can see these numbers. And then every month we look at the numbers and then we talk, what do we need to do different? And what do we need to be tracking that we're not tracking right now?
Right.
And so I feel like it's been really not very much a common thing in Kenyan culture to do that. And so in the beginning, there was a little bit of, I think, anxiety about tracking things. Because Charity and Samson, our work for us on the ground, are doers. And so none of us doers like to tally numbers. Right. And so that's been and it was hard for me to discipline myself to like hold them accountable to do that. And it's been I think they feel amazing when they look and they see the impact that they're making. And that's been really,
I guess that's what I would encourage people watching this to do is to go and plow through your website and your blog and look through all these stories, because it's sometimes can seem so anecdotal that and hard to capture numerically. Look at growth, look at impact, and that's always tempting as an organization to brag about how many bars of soap sold or how many were given away or how many people fed or but when you start to look through these stories, you realize that it's dramatic impact. And so anytime you're able to put that to numbers, that's obviously easier for us to digest it. But I think there's no real way to understand how there's no real way to understand the magnitude of what you do until you start reading through these stories and understanding how Foothold operates and how the impact you have.
Well, and for me, it's just blown me away to like look at what they've accomplished, like what they're, it's one thing Charity will often tell me, I work more than the 40 hours. I'm like, but I don't want you to pay me anymore. Like she'll throw that in there because that's just her way. I just want you to know that I'm working a lot more than what you asked me to. I'm like, you don't have to do that. But then just to see what she's accomplishing and what other people are accomplishing through their leadership is really just really striking. I mean, it's just really kind of mind blowing what they're able to do with what they have. And so anyway, that's been exciting. So
I guess I would hope to, when I think about the future of Foothold, I think of other communities, other organizations that could be partnering and collaborating, because there's, like you said, there are these big organizations that can quickly fundraise large amounts of money, and then there are moments where that's really, really, really necessary, and then there are other organizations that do things well and have different communities that they're working in, and can learn a lot from Foothold. And so I think that's like a huge opportunity, is just trying to continue to collaborate with other.
Yeah, I would love if we could connect in some way. So for example, Christian Broadcast Network, they donated a well, and well costs anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. That's a huge chunk of it would be really outside of our means. So they donated a well to TCA, which is, partners of ours on the ground. Well, the well stopped working. And so it needed repairs. There was no one locally who could repair them. They didn't have the right tools, the right resources to fix it. They didn't have the parts. So, we helped them contact CBN. They said, it's not part of our budget to repair them. That's you. We gave you the well. Yeah. And they just didn't have the resources. That well stopping use was devastating to that community, because there were many families there was just countless, and it was such a hardship. So we came in and were able to pull resources and raise funds and work with some of our partners. And we were able to bring in someone from Nairobi, and now we've made sure that they have a connection and that they're budgeting money to have maintenance and repair to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so that, to me, is something I want to see moving forward, us having these partnerships with these larger organizations to say, hey, you drilled a well, but we can make sure it stays working. We can make sure we can connect the dots on the ground.
That's really unique, because so much of what has taught you and developed Foothold into what it is was kind of learning from those kind of mistakes of other people have made, other organizations.
So many broken wells we've come across. Yeah.
And so many like businesses that are out of business because of a charity that came in and replaced them. And so that sort of partnership and collaboration with different size and different focused organizations that are efficient in their own way. Exactly. There's almost like this sub layer of organizations that need to exist, like Foothold everywhere. This model of hyper focused and targeted strategic involvement to make the community grow on its own, to make the community develop on its own.
Because one day that could happen. I mean, that something could happen and Kenya decides not to give us a visa. Like, we could be out. And so our goal is always, what would happen tomorrow? Everything we do, if we never showed back up, are we leaving a gaping hole? Are things going to be better because we were there? Yeah. And that's always in our mind, because we can't control those things. Every time we cross the border, you never know if they're going to let you through. Right. And so, Kenya there's been wins of, things like that happening. I think we would probably pivot and work across the border in Tanzania if that happened. But, that's always, the end is always in mind, of course, when we're doing this. So, well, thank you, Kevin.
Happy to do it.
I appreciate this talk. I appreciate you coming all the way to Chillicothe and sitting in the cold. And
I appreciate you having me, and I just appreciate all that you do and Foothold does that makes such a great impact.
Oh, that's sweet. It's very nice to have family who are behind you. We were doing kind of a crazy thing for a while, and and so I appreciate, it's great to have supporters, but it's also even better that it's family, that, to have my little brother. And I feel like your support isn't just because I'm your sister. I feel like you really sincerely care about what we do and believe in it. And so, so I appreciate that. And so it's just a bonus that you're related to me. So I know you have other things to do today, so I guess we can wrap this up now. And sure. I do want to say, this is Tuesday when this airs. We're filming, Tuesday, right? Okay. So in 2 days, on Thursday, I'm actually having a live Facebook sale. So if you're watching this, listening to this, make sure you're on our Facebook, you're liking our Facebook group, and you'll see that you can join our Facebook live sale. I think I'm calling it all the right things. I don't know. We'll see. So it's going to be so tune in, and you can order something. You can help support us, and you can buy some things for Christmas that are pretty meaningful and cool. So
yeah, I guess if you thought this was at all interesting, there's probably going to be more interesting people to hear from.
Matt Damon, you're always welcome.
So, subscribe on the website, on the
you can subscribe
Facebook,
on YouTube, subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Did I get all those?
Facebook, YouTube, Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can sign up for our email too. We'll have information about joining our email list. So awesome. All right. Thanks, Kevin. I'll see you guys till next Tuesday.